I mean, if you are a voting member of the Fed and you have to decide about interest rates, as you always do, what incredible pressure this must bring to sort of, if you decide we need to cut rates, to prove the point, right? Show your work that this was done because of data rather than done because of pressure.
Yeah, well, nice to be with you, Courtney. I think Chairman Powell has absolutely opened the door to a rate cut in mid-September. So in some ways, the timing of this is beneficial, that it comes after Jackson Hole, when he gave a little bit more of a dovish speech. Again, that opens the door to that rate cut. But just by and large, I mean, this is a very uncomfortable position for the Federal Reserve to be in. The Federal Reserve obviously prides itself on its independence, on being politically neutral and completely devoid of these politics. So for sure, this comes at a time also when, of course, the Fed is also trying to interpret different types of data, potentially upward pressure on inflation, but then also, potentially headwinds to growth from tariffs and from immigration. So this just compounds what already is a difficult sort of position for the Federal Reserve to be in.
Even obviously there's a lot of discussion about Trump appointees and people that he wants to sort of cooperate with him and his desires. And FHFA Director Bill Pulte was indeed nominated by President Trump. To Steve's earlier point, he's reached out to Mr. Pulte trying to ask questions about how was this investigation started? Is this a normal course of affairs to investigate Fed governors? I mean, any take on that from the folks that you're talking to about the pressure that sort of started from Mr. Pulte himself?
Yeah, Courtney, that's a good way of looking at it. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Eamon, and then we'll grab Libby as well.
Yeah, so I was just going to say that, Pulte is a Trump loyalist, right? He is very, very supportive of the president, and he's supported the president's efforts to investigate the Fed and its building, and whether or not the Fed is wasting money or being irresponsible by renovating its buildings, and that trip that the president famously took to the Fed. So Pulte is somebody who is going to be doing what President Trump wants to have done here. And I think that's a good question, which is, what was the predicate for this investigation? And does that give Abbe Lowell, who is a very sharp attorney, by the way, and is involved in just about every Washington scandal of the past generation, does that give Abbe Lowell the ammunition to argue back and say, wait, if you're only looking at Cook, then that's a political fishing expedition and not real law enforcement, and therefore the entire predicate of this investigation should be thrown out? That's a fascinating legal question going forward.
Absolutely. Libby, go ahead.
No, sorry, I was just going to say, I think you bring up a good point also about the fact that, there is a nomination process, and as it relates to the Fed, so not FHFA, but as it relates to the Fed, just keep in mind, I think this has been a little bit lost in the dialogue today, that anybody who is replaced, so even if the courts do side with the president, and again, kind of open question about kind of the next steps on that, but even if they do, and President Trump is able to fire Governor Cook and then is able to nominate somebody to replace her, just remember, this is quite important, that the Senate still needs to confirm that person. And not only does the broader Senate, which requires 50 of the 53 Republican votes to support that person, that nominee would also have to first go through the Senate Banking Committee. And this might seem like a lot of kind of wonky D.C. talk, but it's really important because the Senate Banking Committee is effectively tied. So one Republican no vote, assuming that Democrats vote against whomever is nominated, would sink that candidate. And of course, there's quite a lot of precedent during Trump 1.0, also during the Biden administration, where the White House ultimately actually had to retract and pull their nominees because they couldn't get through Senate banking. So that is something this advice and consent role that the U.S. Senate plays, even though it may seem perfunctory, and oftentimes it is, Democrats or Republicans, usually senators like to vote in favor of whomever the president of their party wants in their cabinet and for the agencies. It's not always perfunctory, and particularly for the Fed, there have been instances again where the Senate Banking Committee has rejected whomever has been nominated. So that is a key step, and I think from our perspective as investors, really important in terms of this checks and balances, in terms of kind of the independence of the Fed going forward.